Well, for people who don't know, let's rewind the clock a little bit to the last time we met, and let's talk about who you are, what you do, and what you're currently involved in. So I'm with Dan and Deryn, both halves of EntropiK. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right, well, EntropiK is basically cello-driven composition partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started back in 2006 when we first met,
Mm-hmm.
which was initially for me to come and put some cello parts down on another project that Danny was working on. We happened to meet on Valentine's Day, and so we felt obliged to get married soon after, as you do. But one of the things that we did on that first weekend that we met was Danny recorded a cello improvisation of mine, and was quite taken with it, and took it and added some elements of electronica to it, and just gave it a bed to sit in, and we were both absolutely delighted with the result. The track was called 4 AM.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it was about that time that I had the idea, because it was a long night. It was a long night of
imbibing,
yes,
and
talking, and I mean, Deryn had been doing some fairly structured cello on a piece I was working on, but I'd heard her just warming up, and I thought, that warming up just sounds really good. And I said, what do you like it? She'd mentioned improv. I said, well, do you mind just sitting down and just playing something? I'll record you, and then let's just see where that goes. So we did that, and yeah, it worked out really well. So we then had this sort of fabulous idea of taking cello, and classical cello, Deryn's a classically trained cellist, and putting it into a slightly different arena while keeping the classical elements, but doing different things with it. Not just the electronics, but the treatment of the cello, even to the extent of putting it through pitch manipulation programs, mm-hmm. and coming up with these kind of weird effects and weird sounds, but were essentially and recognisably still cello. And EntropiK has continued pretty much in that vein, although I mean now we're doing other projects as well, so we go from one thing to another depending on what we consider is most important at the time. I mean, we had planned to start doing another EntropiK album this year, but at the moment that's showing absolutely no signs of happening because Deryn's busy with the cello tutor teaching side of things, and I'm busy with my own sort of modern filmic type compositions. But we will undoubtedly go back to it. There'll be a moment after a bottle of wine and we'll go, what we need to do now, and we'll go back to EntropiK and think, where we're going with that. And the beauty of having a break is that you have different ideas since the last time, so you're not just rehashing the same old ideas, because if there's one thing we both hate is doing the same thing twice. Absolutely.
And I think the buzzword for EntropiK has always been experimentation. In a way, it's been our means of finding our joint compositional voice. So we've tried a lot of different tacks in terms of how we create music. It started out with cello improvs, with Danny then adding elements of electronica, and also sort of cutting up the improvs and reworking them and structuring them into something that ended up being the end product. We then start doing it the other way around, where Danny would compose something quite complete, but with space for cello, and I would then add something on top of that, which would either be, again, improvisation, or very structured, very composed, where I would actually score the cello part or parts, especially when there is more than one cello part. Is where I start finding it just works a lot better, sounds a lot better, feels a lot better when everything has been a little bit more calculated and hasn't just come off the top of my head.
So what are some of the challenges you found in getting into that creativity? Because you've talked about, you know, coming back from the break and obviously sort of trying to get your mojo working again, but with such a diverse area of activity in music, does that make it easier or does it make it more challenging for you?
Depends.
I think it makes it harder.
I think so too, and I think having, you know, both of us having a very wide and eclectic taste in music and in what we want to express musically means that we can get a little bit scattered with, you know, sort of where we're actually heading, and finding a sound that people can lock into, that people can identify with us. And we knew, you know, we've always known that it needed to be more than just the cello. That was a starting point. But what we've done with past albums that we've worked on has been either to find a concept, which we did for our first album. It was called Reflections on Time, and it was born out of the 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. improvisations. And
coming from a proggy background, that was sort of
very appealing.
Something that I felt was absolutely obligatory, having a concept album.
So each track that we composed had something to do with time. Mm-hmm. And we added a bit of spoken word to some of the tracks. Some might say it was quite pretentious, but we liked the end result.
Yeah,
it's art.
Nothing wrong with a bit of pretension.
And then for the second album, I think the glue was that it was electronica based. Mm-hmm. And that it was experimental electronica, along the lines of Robert Fripp and what he does with his amazing guitar work, turning the guitar into an instrument that sings and does things that you just don't expect the guitar to do.
Yeah, I mean, we called it cellotronics. I mean, it was referencing Frippatronics, but it wasn't created in the same way as Fripp. I mean, it was, like, you know, a loop-based process, and this was more sort of composed in sections rather than in loops. But there was just it was something I did to the cello using, I can't remember which program it was, but it got these crazy sweeps, and it just really reminded me of Fripp's playing. So just as a homage to my great guitar hero, we called it cellotronics.
Of course. Well, there's nothing wrong with a tip to the hat to
no, exactly. No,
people you stand on the shoulders of.
Yeah.
Good. And that was released recently, wasn't it? Relatively.
I remastered it, and because we released it
as an EP about a year and a half ago.
And then we decided that it kind of needed to come down and needed redoing, and some more tracks that were done subsequently, putting on it to change. I mean, it was a big EP. It was about 7 tracks, but some of the tracks,
very short tracks.
Some of the tracks were quite short because they were more thought forms. They were more sort of, you know, rather than something that went on for 20 minutes. Some of them would go on for a minute and a half, because as far as I was concerned, it had said all it needed to in a minute and a half, and anything more than that would have just been padding. So we ended up with 7 tracks, but fairly short, so we didn't dare call it an album, so it was an EP. But now we've remastered those and added some more things, which I couldn't even begin to tell you what they were now, because that was a while ago.
What we've added are electronica world music inspired tracks with Middle Eastern flavour especially. One of those is a track called Hitman in Cairo, which has samples of duduk and you know, those sort of wonderful Middle Eastern modes and rhythms, and then the cello just mimicking that style and sound. So Again, it's an album that's quite rich and you know, it's got quite a broad palette in terms of the styles of music that come up on it. But as I said, the glue really is the electronica and the sort of fairly experimental.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that you're going to be dancing to.
Well, some of the tracks you might, but
you might do a quick belly dance to Hitman and Cairo, but
yeah,
mainly it's I mean, you know, Eno, he with his the concept of having music there to change a mood. You know, it's not something that, you know, most of these tracks you wouldn't have to, you know, sit down and analyse because it's art. It is what it is. It's a feeling. So you could quite cheerfully just sort of have it on in the background and just have a glass of wine, chat over it, whatever. You know, it's not something that you need to sort of analyse.
No, and I think that's the thing I love about you is there's a real authenticity about what it is you do. You're not trying to hop onto trends. You're really digging into your own unique artistry, both individually and together, and blending that. And I get a sense of that's why it works. Would you feel the same?
Well, thank you for saying that. I think so, yeah. I mean, EntropiK is... I spend a lot of the time writing music for music libraries and pitching films, things like that, where you are fairly well directed into what is going to be wanted. Yeah, I mean, I could write something all arty and I could put it on libraries and it'd sit there forever and everybody go, why is that there?
Until somebody licenses it, which they do from time to time.
Yeah, but EntropiK is where I feel there I can sort of have a better listen inside to what's going on and try and have something that's meaningful. It's a horrible word, but meaningful to me and to Deryn.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be meaningful to anybody else. That's not the point.
No, I think EntropiK is very definitely, out of all the projects that we've ever worked on and that we continue to work on, it is art for art's sake. And, you know, at times we sort of tried to find ways of making it more contemporary or commercially viable, if you like. And whenever we tried too hard with that, it just went stale. It just didn't work.
Yeah, and then we got hung up on the oh well, maybe if we make it a bit more trip hoppy and we could put this in and we could do that, and you know, why bother? Well, just why bother? I mean, there are a million bands out there doing a million things, most of which are in a certain area. So, I mean, we're never going to retire on the proceeds of selling EntropiK albums. You know, it is, we make that essentially for us and for any like-minded people who are interested in it. So we decided we were being absolutely stupid trying to even nod to commercial things.
That was never what it was intended to be in the first place. And so, you know, we're quite happy for it to continue not being that thing.
Yeah, because then we had another panic, which was, okay, we've recorded this now. You know, we are EntropiK, it sounds like a band, we should be a band. What do bands do? They go out and play it live. And
oh boy.
Right, no. And the more I listened and thought, well, no, it's not doable. It's it is a studio album, it's a production album.
Mm-hmm.
We did, you know, we did make a few attempts to make it live, and we did one very successful gig actually, which was a great gig to start and finish on.